Welcome back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday. Today I'm answering a question that was asked of me when I was talking to a potential new client. And the question was, why are you focused on my gut when I have a thyroid problem? So there's a huge connection between thyroid health, thyroid function, thyroid physiology, and what goes on in your GI tract. So a couple important points. One, that it's thought about maybe 20% of the circulating T3, that's the active hormone, is actually coming from the gut. So it's important. So if you have gut dysfunction, you may have a drop in the amount of available T3 in circulation, and that means a reduced amount that can get to your cells and tissues. And remember, it's the amount of T3 in the cell binding to receptors that makes you feel and function well. Two, your gut is so important for key nutrients that the thyroid gland is going to need to make thyroid hormone. So if you have a gut issue, you have decreased digestion, you have decreased absorption, you can't get the appropriate micronutrients into the bloodstream to even get to the thyroid gland. The other thing that's important from the other end of this is that the gut is like the big area where we get rid of everything. So a lot of times people are worried about toxins and toxicity, and you have to have healthy detoxification process. So the liver, urinary tract, and the gut are key ways we get rid of the waste in the body. The third big reason that the gut becomes important is because it's thought that maybe 70% of the immune system surrounds the GI tract. If you think about it, the GI tract is really the outside of our body. We dump food and water and nutrients down this tube, and then the body pulls those micronutrients across the GI barrier into the body proper, and then everything comes out the other end that we don't need or we're trying to get rid of. And so the immune system surrounds the GI tract to make sure that things that shouldn't cross that barrier are there. If there starts to become some bacterial imbalance and dysfunction within the GI tract, we can start to trigger inflammation that affects the gut, and we can have that same inflammation can affect us systemically. That same inflammation can activate the immune system. So when there's problems with somebody having some chronic low-grade inflammation and having immune-related issues, we always have to take a look at the gut and the GI tract. And lastly, there is a direct connection based on the scientific literature from the gut to the thyroid gland. And I've talked about this on multiple videos, that when there are danger particles, we call these PAMPs, pathogen-associated molecular peptides, these pieces of bacteria that may be commensal bacteria or pathogenic organisms in the gut, if they get into the lymph, they can get to the thyroid gland, and those pathogen-associated molecular peptides can bind to the receptors on the thyroid tissue and actually activate thyroiditis. So gut health is really, really critically important. So here's 3 common issues I see in almost all the clients I see. One of those is increased intestinal permeability. And some people call this a leaky gut syndrome. So when we think about the GI tract, the GI tract is one cell layer thick. And you can think about the GI tract like if my hands are the cells where when my hands come together, my pinkies come together, my hand comes together. That's what we call a tight junction. Now we should really absorb most of the nutrients through the villi, that's these areas. But when there's problems in the GI tract, decreased bile production, biophysiology, low short chain fatty acids, inflammation, dysbiosis, these tight junctions can start to become more permeable. Then poorly digested food can cross that barrier, and we can also get bacteria and bacterial toxins cross that barrier. So this is what we call leaky gut, okay? The barrier is not like impermeable, but it's more like maybe the screen in your kitchen window. It's got small little passages for properly digested micronutrients to cross through, but the holes aren't so big that undigested food and bacteria and bacterial toxins should cross through. We typically see malabsorption issues. And how do we see this? We can just look at a comprehensive metabolic panel and we can see patterns of micronutrient malabsorption. And then the third big thing is we typically see dysbiosis. Now, what is this? This is an imbalance of the bacterial flora in the GI tract. And so these are 3 super common issues that we see with people who have, almost all my clients, and especially my patients with thyroid-related issues. So what are some warning signs that this might be going on in you, that you might have a GI problem, even if you don't think you have one? Well, we'll talk about it. So bloating, especially bloating a couple, post-meal, common sign that there's problems in the GI tract. Irregular bowel movements. Maybe you're constipated. Maybe you have loose stools. Maybe you have both of those. Food reactivity. So you eat food and you seem to have abnormal responses to that. You might look on your labs and see this chronic reduced conversion of T4 to T3. And somebody might say, well, your body lost the ability to convert T4 to T3. But if you have reduced conversion of T4 to T3, and I typically look at the free T3, free T4 ratio for that, depending on the meds somebody's on, then problems with inflammation and problems within the gut could be the reason why you have reduced conversion of T4 to T3. And another one is that if you're taking a lot more medication than you probably should for your size, and you're taking way more medication than your thyroid gland would ever make, is usually a good indication that there's problems with absorption of micronutrients, or absorption, not just of micronutrients, but of your medication as well. So it's not unusual that when I start working with somebody, we start working on their diet and their nutrition and start working on addressing what's going on in the gut, that the amount of medication they were taking before we met quickly becomes way too much. Because now that the gut's starting to have less inflammation, less dysbiosis, and better absorption, they're absorbing a ton more medication into the body, and it becomes too much. So we have to really monitor that. So what are some action steps that you can take today to start improving gut function and work on your thyroid recovery? One, if you're not consuming a whole food-based diet, I would start there. There's lots of diets. There's people that say this is the thyroid diet, or you need to be on keto or carnivore or vegan or whatever. Just start with a whole food-based diet. Get rid of all the processed foods, the sodas, alcohol, get rid of all that stuff, and just really focus on eating a whole food-based diet. And from the plant-based perspective, keep an eye on whether you have a lot of gas or bloat when you eat your plant matter, if it makes a difference if it's cooked or not cooked. 2, your eating habits. So many people are already under stress and they're eating on the run. This is not the best for improved digestion. If you've got a thyroid-related issue, you already have reduced stomach acid production, reduced motility, probably reduced bile flow and bile function and pancreatic enzyme secretion. So eating on the run is going to make it even more difficult to break down and digest your food. So when you're going to eat, take the time, sit down, relax, enjoy the meal, small bites, eat slow, chew a lot, don't drink much water while you're eating. You can keep a food journal, and this would be really helpful if you do see a functional medicine practitioner like myself. If you already come in with receipts as to, hey, when I eat these foods, this is what I experience, it's going to help us out quite a bit in understanding what's going on with your gut and how we can help you. I talked about the alcohol, and then the last thing is start consuming probiotic-rich foods or fermented foods. Now, a lot of people want to go right to probiotic supplements. I don't have a major problem with them. I use them in practice as well. But there's a lot of, you can start with just make your own yogurt at home, more probiotic-based yogurt at home. You can start with eating more fermented foods, but eat more probiotic-rich foods or foods that are going to support bacterial growth in your gut. Okay, be helpful for those. So 5 tips. Number 6, if you're done a lot of stuff, done a lot of things that you think should be helping your gut and your GI tract, then reach out to a functional medicine practitioner like myself. If you need some help from me, go to my profile and you can schedule a complimentary discovery call. We can talk about what's going on with your situation and what I might be able to do to help you. All right? Take care.